Our memory verse for the month of September is found in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. And this will be our memory verse for the month. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And I think that's important to remember now because we don't need fear in our lives. That's going to throw our immune system off, and we don't need to do that. So I have a few announcements for you today. Next Saturday, the 19th, is actually the Feast of Trumpets. It will be a regular church service. However, since we usually do have testimonies during our high days, if you do have a testimony, you can always write it in your on Facebook in the comments, and you can put your testimony there. I will not have testimony time at church just because we do keep it to the half hour, and I don't want to have to walk around with a microphone so everybody can hear you. But if you choose to have a testimony, you can always write it in the comments. I will probably blow the ram's horn for you, and I don't play music. It just comes out as a sound. But that is what was done back in biblical days for the holy days to announce the coming in of the holy days. The Day of Atonement is the 28th, which is a Monday, and that's September, the 28th of September. I will be broadcasting a service. I'm not sure whether it will be from church or just from home on Sunday evening at 7 o'clock. So that will be a service Sunday evening at 7 o'clock for the Day of Atonement. And then for Tabernacles, it is October 3rd and 10th, which again are both Saturdays. So 3 of our high days fall on Saturdays this year. Only the Day of Atonement is on the Monday, the 28th, and we will have a service on the 27th. I can also do it on the 28th too. I could do it during the day, it doesn't matter, but we have been doing this the previous evening before, so we'll probably stick with that. So those basically are the announcements. We still have Happy Bible Hour on Sunday mornings at 7 o'clock over WBSM. We got a call this week for a Bible, and it was a person that doesn't get out much, and obviously even less now. And so we'll be sending her a Bible. But the cute thing about the call was she called and left a message, and then I had to call her back. And she said that she listens every Sunday morning to the Happy Bible Hour, but that before her mother used to listen to the Happy Bible Hour every Sunday morning. And this person did not sound very young. So I'm sure that her mother listened when Pastor Baldwin and Ellsworth were the ones that were doing the program. So she is dying to get her Bible and so happy that she will have a large print because, you know, she did say she does have trouble seeing, and a large print would be very helpful. So we'll get that out to her this week. I usually send Rick to the post office, so I'll have him bring that out. So I don't think I have any other announcements. If you are in church, Daisy did make us some bookmarks for our memory verse, so they are at the back. And if you would like one, just let me know and I can send it to you if you would like one. Just let me know. So I think that's it for our announcements. Our scripture reading today is from Leviticus chapter 11, and this is one of the chapters that lists the foods that we should eat and shouldn't eat. And I'm not going to read the whole chapter because most of it is just about the laws, but I am going to read quite a bit of it because we will be finishing talking about these types of laws today. So that's Leviticus chapter 11, and I'm going to read through verse 19, which is pretty long. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, saying unto them, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, These are the beasts which ye shall eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. And just as an aside right here, just note that these aren't the laws of Moses. These were given to Moses and Aaron by God. So for those people that say these are just, rules that Moses got from the people around him, right here in black and white, it says God gave these rules. Verse 3, Whatsoever parteth the hoof, and is cloven-footed, and cheweth the cud among the beasts, that ye shall eat. Nevertheless, these shall ye not eat of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the hoof, as the camel, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And the coney, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And the hare, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And the swine, though he divideth the hoof, and be cloven-footed, yet he cheweth not the cud, he is unclean to you. Of their flesh shall ye not eat, and their carcass shall ye not touch, they are unclean to you. These shall ye eat of all that are in the waters. Whatsoever hath fins and scales in the waters, in the seas, and in the rivers, them shall ye eat. And all that have not fins and scales in the seas and in the rivers, of all that move in the waters, and of any living thing which is in the waters, they shall be an abomination unto you. They shall be even an abomination unto you. Ye shall not eat of their flesh, but ye shall have their carcasses in abomination. Whosoever hath no fins nor scales in the water, that shall be an abomination unto you. And these are they which ye shall have an abomination among the fowls. They shall not be eaten. They are an abomination. The eagle and the ossifrage and the osprey and the vulture and the kite after his kind. Every raven after his kind, and the owl and the nighthawk and the cuckoo and the hawk after his kind, and the little owl and the cormorant and the great owl, and the swan and the pelican and the gier eagle, and the stork, the heron after her kind, and the lapwing and the bat. And may God add his blessing to this reading from his holy word. So here we are talking about the biblical principles of health and how we should be conducting ourselves for our optimum health. God did give us 120 years, and there are not very many people that live to 120 and are healthy. There's a big difference between, living to a ripe old age and not being able to do things, because that's not what God wants for us. He wants us to be healthy and to be able to be disciples of his. And so the goal is to live a certain amount of years, but also to live them as healthy years. And so we have to take control of ourselves and our bodies and decide what it is we want. And again, it is our decision. No one else can do it for us. We have to make the decision. So we talked about previously in this study that there are certain foods that you can eat and can't eat. And basically, if you don't know if an animal chews its cud or the type of hoof or foot it has, you can go with, if an animal is an herbivore, meaning it basically eats plants and nothing else, then you're usually pretty safe. But if it is an omnivore or a carnivore, then you shouldn't eat it. And so there are reasons behind that. We looked at not just the reasons health-wise, but we also looked at environmentally why it is best not to eat these foods. We finished off last week talking about the pig or swine, how we should not eat them. And I just have one more thing to say about pork, and that is the word trichinosis. And I'm sure we've heard that word before. It is a parasite. It's a roundworm. It gets into muscle tissue, and it's one of the main diseases that are caused by swine and other unclean animals. Now, for the most part, in the United States, that is not an issue. We raise our animals differently, although if you do see some videos that are always surfacing around, it's not very nice to the animals. But trichinosis is a global disease, and actually it affects 11 million people every year. Pork has been the most popular meat in the world, just recently surpassed by poultry. And on the average, each American consumes more than 50 pounds of pork every year. And I have a feeling that a lot of that is bacon, that people seem to like a lot. Pigs are not alone in spreading trichinosis. Many carnivorous and omnivorous animals are infected with this parasite, such as the bear and the walrus. I don't think I've ever seen walrus meat around any place, but I'm sure in cold climates that might be something people eat. And also things like squirrels, rats, cats, dogs, rabbits, foxes, panthers, lions, and horses. And of course, these animals are the animals that are usually eaten in more underdeveloped countries where they, are eating whatever is available to them. They don't have necessarily the money or whatever, so they eat what's available, such as things like squirrels and the like. I know the squirrels in my yard are fighting the birds for the seed, and but I would not think of ever hurting it or bringing it in the house and eating it. But anyway, so tapeworms, which again afflict about 100 million people, is another serious health problem along with the trichinosis. Beef and fish can contain tapeworm that get into the human digestive tract, and it just kind of makes us really very uncomfortable. But the pork itself is actually worse, even with this disease, and it is especially prevalent in underdeveloped communities with poor sanitation, and often where they eat raw or undercooked pork, such as in Latin America, Eastern Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Asia. General medical advice is to avoid parasitic infection. And how can you avoid it? You don't eat those meats. It's kind of simple as that. And again, this is what God instructed Moses to tell the people of Israel 3,500 years ago. So obviously God made these things. He knows what they're good for and what they're not good for. But if we stopped eating pork or followed biblical dietary code, the global burden of parasitic diseases would be reduced in a generation. And again, we don't find it so much in our country because of the way we process foods and the like, but especially in underdeveloped countries, we do see that. In this pamphlet that I've used, the next section is called Don't Eat the Cleanup Crew. And so we've now been looking at the land animals that we see, and then what we can eat and what we can't eat. But the second major set of divine dietary instructions concerns aquatic creatures. Scripture instructs that you may eat those that are in the water, that have fins and scales, and they can be in fresh water or in salt water. But if they don't have fins and scales, then the word the Bible uses, they're an abomination. And, when we look at these, we're going to see why the word it's really tells us what it is. So they were, like everything else, these divinely ordained biblical guidelines were designed to point people to the safest kind of fish to eat. And that's what this is. This is a general overview of what is safe for you, what will give you the most nutrition, and what won't harm you. So biblically clean fish generally swim free. So they swim, that's important to remember, in bodies of water. Most unclean fish are either bottom dwellers, which will give you a hint as to what you're eating and you shouldn't be, or predatory scavengers. The prohibition against eating fish that have no scales protects against the consumption of fish that often produce poisonous substances in their bodies. And that's why that's there. Obviously science years later picks the dietary laws of the Bible apart, and they see why it is that way. Shellfish, lacking both fins and scales, are clearly excluded by the biblical dietary laws. But why would lobsters, crabs, crayfish, and shrimp, considered delicacies in most of the world, be prohibited? Well, the answer lies, and most people know this, and they don't want to hear about it, or they say, but it tastes so good. But anyway, I still don't get that. The answer lies in understanding the role they were designed to play in nature. So let's talk about lobsters, first of all. Lobsters are nocturnal foragers. They are bottom-dwelling predatory scavengers. And what do they eat? dead creatures. They eat dead creatures, which then, it could be a dead creature that's been dead for a while and not really good to eat. And they eat other bottom-dwelling organisms and debris. If you've ever gone, put lobster pots out, what is usually put in the lobster pot to entice the lobster to enter the pot is dead fish or something dead that they're going to be attracted to. And they have lobsters, as you know, if you've seen them, they have these long antennae. And those long antennae have tiny hair-like sensors, and they can detect specific chemical molecules in the environment. And these molecules are those that are released by decaying organisms. And so this is what the lobster goes after. He can locate his food, even in the dark, by these chemicals. Lobsters have also been observed to bury a dead fish, then dig it up later to eat it at its convenience. So they're actually quite intelligent creatures, but not fit for consumption. Crabs, and no, I didn't call you people crabby. Crabs have been called professional garbage hunters, as they are scavengers that eat almost anything. The crab prefers dead fish, but will eat any carrion. Common shrimp live by day in the mud or sandy bottoms of bays and estuaries, but by night they become active as predatory scavengers and again are bottom-dwelling feeders. These organisms, and again, God created them for a reason, just not for our food. They were created for an ecological purpose. They are the garbage collectors. They clean up. They're the cleanup crew for the bottoms of lakes, rivers, bays, and oceans. They were not designed for human consumption. They were designed to clean up. Now, we haven't mentioned the rest of the delicacies that many of you like, and those are such things as clams, oysters, mussels, and scallops. They too are labeled unclean and inappropriate for human consumption. These creatures are found in lakes and streams and coastal areas where they perform specialized roles. They do have a role in the environment. As stationary, because we know, unlike the crabs and the lobsters, these just kind of stay in one place. They're stationary, and what happens is they pump large amounts of water over their mucus-covered gills, which right there sounds disgusting, trapping tiny pieces of food and things like silt or plant debris, bacteria, viruses, all those things that you need to filter through from the water. That's what these animals, seafood things, do. And as a result, they're the vacuum cleaners. They pull out all that's in the ocean. It passes through them. They clean it up. And then they send out the clean water, and they leave the junky stuff inside themselves. They purify the water. Yuck. That's all I have to say. Once you understand the purpose for which God created shellfish, the reason they are considered unclean should become obvious. Most of us would be reluctant to make a meal from the contents of our vacuum cleaner bag, or from the material that collects on our furnace filter or our septic tank. But that's exactly what is happening when you eat shellfish. You are eating things that have filtered all of that yucky stuff through them. And they accumulate disease-causing bacteria and viruses that are harmful to people. So how serious is this threat of disease from shellfish? Well, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has stated that raw oysters, clams, and mussels, so savored by gourmets, account for 85% of all the illnesses caused by eating seafood. Outbreaks of cholera, typhoid, hepatitis A, Norwalk virus, salmonella, and paralytic shellfish poisoning are just some of the health problems frequently linked to the consumption of mollusks. Perhaps this is why Norwalk virus breaks out from time to time on cruise ships. And I've always heard that word, but didn't realize what it was caused from. And it is caused from shellfish. That's considered a gourmet meal, so on a cruise where you're going and expecting all this great food, then you would probably eat more of it because normally you couldn't afford to get it, but because you're on a cruise, you eat more of it, and that's why oftentimes there are outbreaks of illness. Public health authorities have recommended that pregnant women and the elderly and those with immune systems weakened by certain diseases like cancer, diabetes, and AIDS should avoid eating or even handling uncooked shellfish because it can be dangerous and potentially life-threatening. God was protecting us with his dietary laws, not prohibiting us from eating certain things, but protecting us. And then I didn't read in the rest of the chapter, but starting with verse 20, it then goes to talk about birds and bugs. So the final group of organisms covered by the biblical code are birds, insects, and reptiles. Essentially, all the unclean fowl are either birds of prey or scavengers, like vultures and seagulls. Carnivorous birds are important in controlling populations of other animals. Their habit of eating flesh and the blood of their prey make these birds potential agents for transmitting many different diseases. Predatory fish-eating birds, an example of that would be an eagle, tend to accumulate high levels of toxic chemicals in their bodies, and so you should not eat them. And then reptiles are among the animals listed as unfit for human food. So that would be, of course, your crocodiles, alligators, turtles, things like that. And then regarding insects, and insects are not something that in the United States we eat a lot of, but it is in certain countries and considered a delicacy. Insects, the only ones that you can eat are ones like the locust and the grasshopper, from those type, that the family of them. They're permissible as food. And they're distinguished by having strong hind legs for springing. So if you have a desire to eat a bug, make sure that it is a grasshopper or locust. And historically, this has been a food source in the Middle East. And again, you know, I bet if you went online and put in chocolate-covered grasshoppers, you would find a whole list of places you could buy them from. I'm not suggesting you do that, but if you have an inkling to do so, if you want to change up your diet a little, that would be safe for you. So we have just gone through those chapters of what is good for us and what is not. The laws about clean and unclean animals are not the only biblical instruction that we have that concern our diet. Scripture tells us not only what animals are good for food, but also what parts of the animal can be eaten and what parts should not be eaten. The Bible plainly states that when we eat meat, we should avoid the consumption of fat and blood. And this is from Leviticus chapter 3, verse 17. So why are these two things singled out? Well, first of all, the fat that is described in Leviticus is the visceral fat. It's that fat found around the liver and the kidneys and the intestines. Kind of when you have too much of that fat, even in humans, you're not healthy. If you have a lot of fat on your liver and your kidneys, your body isn't functioning the way it should. So this fat is not healthy. It's the fat that can be trimmed off the meat for the most part. These fats were actually used, though, to be burned at the altar as a sacrifice to God, but they were forbidden for human consumption. But why shouldn't we eat these fats? Was God against flavorable food? Because you know, if you get a piece of steak and it has no fat running through it, it's probably not very tasty. And if you cook it all the way through, it's probably like shoe leather. So did he say you should have no fat? Well, in fact, The very fats listed by name in Leviticus are forbidden as are a staple of British cooking, and British food is not the best food if you've ever lived in a household where cooking is bland. But that's what they use as their flavoring. Medical science, modern medical science studies indicate that diets that are high in certain kinds of fats, such as associated with the list in Leviticus, are also associated with weight gain, obesity, heart disease, various kinds of cancer, and other problems. And while there is some dispute about the complex details concerning which fats are good and which fats are bad, and I know you will look on a label of a food and see, you know, if it has trans fats or not trans fats and all that stuff, and that's not what the Bible calls it, but that's what it is. The Bible is consistent, and for 3,000 years has said this is what you should eat and shouldn't eat. And we know our dietary laws have changed. But all fat is not bad. The Bible does not forbid the consumption of marbled fat within the meat that gives it the flavor. So when you're buying a piece of steak, you do want to see some marbling through your steak so that it does have flavor. And this is because it is different. It's a different kind of fat. This intramuscular fat is chemically distinct from the fat that God forbids us to eat. So the fat that, you know, the visceral fat that's there that shouldn't be there around your liver, your kidneys, etc., is far different from the fat that you see running through the meat that you would eat. And even chemically can be proven that it's different. In moderation, we can get our fats. Well, you do need fats in your body, and actually, once our country told us to go, you know, get rid of all our fats and all that stuff, our rise in Alzheimer's went up because your brain needs fat to be healthy. And so we do have healthy fats that we can eat. In moderation, and everything in moderation, milk, cheese, butter, and yogurt can be healthful food sources. And we can see in the Bible in Genesis 18 that Abraham and Sarah served things like that when they were visited by the Creator. Of course, the Bible does not forbid and actually says to eat things like nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables, and clean fish, all of which can be a source of healthy fats. And this will give us the various nutrition sources that we need in our body. But if you look at our diet in the Western world, oftentimes we make visits to fast food establishments and their supersized approach, where we're getting sugary sodas, mountains of fries, and fat-drenched triple patty burgers. Generally, it's not in moderation. You're eating way too much, and it is not the type of things you should be eating. And then we also see, and I'm probably going to stop with this because the next thing that we look at, I have a lot to say about it, and I don't want to go over too long. But this other thing that we should not eat from animals is blood. And this is in Leviticus chapter 3 and chapter 7. But there are some cultures that actually make food made with bloods, from black pudding in the United Kingdom and blood sausage in Germany and other parts of Europe. And then there's something, I'm probably going to say it wrong, Tiet Khan in Asia, which is a pudding made from the raw blood of animals such as pigs and ducks. I don't think I've ever seen that word before, but So some of the nutrition industry even advocates for the use of blood as a food, seeing it as a wasted product at a slaughterhouse. But it's all right. I feel like we can waste it. And they look at it sometimes as a potential superfood. But again, this is a way for the meat industry to profit. But most advocates make little mention of the health risks involved in making and consuming these blood products. In a report detailing the death of a number of people who had eaten Tiet Khan in celebration of the Vietnamese Lunar New Year, the Vietnam Association of Science, Technology, and Food Safety noted the deadly nature of the practice, and this is a quote: "The blood carries many diseases from the animals. People eating raw blood from sick pigs can get swine bacteria, worms, and other digestive diseases, while those having blood from sick chickens," listen to these diseases, "can be infected with H5N1 or, remember, H1N1. The disease the flu that we saw a few years ago that actually affected young people, not older people, because those of us that were a bit older already had antibodies for it. So we can see many things happening in the world, and we can see reasons why they're happening because we're not following God's laws. So while many theologians believe the Old Testament commands about not eating blood were only for the Jews, and remember again, I have to say to you, keep reminding you that these laws were not given to the Jews, they were given to the children of Israel, of which we are a part. Many say that these laws again were done away when Jesus came, but the first century apostles, the church at its very beginning, were still instructing New Testament Christians, including Gentiles, that they should not eat blood. And there's a couple of verses in Acts that tell you this, in Acts chapter 15. We can see that especially in some parts of the world, obeying the biblical health principles can mean the difference between life and death. So, I have mentioned before, I have not, my whole life, have not eaten any of the things that we're told not to, and now they don't even look inviting to me. But if you are, and you find yourself that you're not feeling well, or you're unhealthy, and you're eating these things in large amounts, try stopping, see what happens. So next week we're going to probably, maybe, hopefully, I never get to where I expect to be, finish up on the dietary laws. And we're going to be talking a lot about moderation and sugars and flours and starches and things like that, which is a big problem in this country. If you look at especially the obesity rates that we see around us. So that will be next week for the dietary laws. The question is, do you really want to eat that? And then after that, and this is a bugaboo, the next chapter is about exercise. We are a body designed to move. And as I said, this study of biblical health is not just about what you eat. It's the whole body. It affects your whole body, your soul, mind, and spirit. So I'm going to have to, I guess, get off the couch before chapter 3 so that I can at least say that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do also. I should do what I preach, not just preach it. So I want to thank you for listening in this afternoon, and I hope you're getting some information about this. For those of you that have in the past eaten a lot of these foods that I have been talking about, and you're thinking about getting it out of your diet, good luck. It will be cheaper. You won't be buying expensive things, and you might find yourself feeling physically better. So this afternoon, as we go to prayer, I ask that there are many of us that know people in the church that need praying for. We had another death this week, and so we'll pray for that family. A sad situation, so we'll pray for that family. We have some people that are not feeling well and can't seem to find the reason behind their illness, so let's keep those in our prayers. We all know someone, I think, that's suffering from cancer or diabetes or heart or whatever the case may be, diseases that are difficult to get a hold of, and oftentimes we have to poison our body to get rid of it, and then other things happen. So we all have someone that we know needs prayer, and in general the church. And that's being said, we do need to pray for churches. We can see that as the day approaches, churches will be the ones that are in the limelight, and we'll have to be extra vigilant. For those of you that came out today, I blocked off every other pew because we did have a church in the city that was fined for not following directions. So I wanted to make sure that we're following directions to the letter of the law. And you all being very good about wearing your masks coming in and out of the church, which again is another stipulation. We are not singing yet because that again is what we were told we can't do. The church that was fined, I believe, was singing. So we're trying to follow the rules so that we are not fined and that we are able to stay open. Because worse than the fining might be the closing, and we certainly don't want that to happen. So for the time being, we will continue the process that we're doing right now, which is Facebook Live and to YouTube after the fact. And, hopefully we'll stay open. So keep that in mind, and you are welcome to come out, but again, practicing the laws. So let's go to God in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you this afternoon for all that you do for us each and every day. We know that you put things in front of our faces for us to pay attention to, and sometimes we don't pay attention and you have to shake us up a little bit. And so we thank you that you do that you do shake us up when necessary so that we can do what's best for us and best for those around us. We thank you that you have made us the light to the world, and although it is a big responsibility, we also know that you are by our side the whole time, guiding us and directing us. You've given us your word with what we need to know. And the example of that is the dietary laws that you gave us to keep us healthy. We thank you that you have given us a complete list or a complete way of living that would make us healthy and would certainly make us good disciples for you. And that includes keeping our minds and our thoughts focused on you so that we can take the love that you have for us and spread it to those around us. And for that, we certainly do give you thanks. I ask special blessings today on those that are sick, or those that mourn, those with financial difficulties, and especially those that the church and the listeners are holding on their hearts today. You know the person that or persons that we're thinking of. You know their need. You know the time frame in which that need has to be met. And so we put it in your hands because you certainly know more than we do, and you will take care of the problem for us. And that includes the fear and the anxiousness that we feel each and every day as we see things progressing in the world. I ask special blessings on our governments, both local and national, protection for our president and his family, protection for our service personnel throughout the world, and blessings on their families, and blessings and protections on our first responders and volunteers and those that deal with the public. Please keep them safe, help them to do their jobs to the best of their ability with wisdom and patience. And as always, I ask that everything that has been said today is to your name's honor and glory, giving you praise and thanks. In your Son's name, amen. And God is good all the time.